Ria's hands trembled as she held the shipping manifest under the light, her father's voice echoing in her mind. Paper doesn't lie, baby girl. The ink always tells the truth. Byun Seok Woo stood behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough that his cologne, something dark and expensive, made her thoughts scatter. But she forced herself to focus on the document, on the microscopic details that didn't add up. This contract is dated March 2019, she said quietly, her voice steadier than she felt. But the paper stock has optical brighteners that weren't commercially available until 2021, and this logo, she pointed to the company letterhead, her finger not quite touching the page. The kerning is off by 0.03 millimeters. Whoever designed this didn't have access to the original font file. The silence that followed was suffocating. When Seok Woo finally spoke, his voice was dangerously soft. "You're telling me this document is a forgery?" It wasn't a question. Ria turned to face him, and the intensity in his dark eyes should have terrified her. Instead, something else stirred in her chest, something reckless and warm. "Yes," she whispered, "and if this one is fake, there might be others." His hand came up, fingers gentle as they tilted her chin. "Ria Anderson," he murmured, "you just saved my empire." 3 weeks earlier, Ria had been contemplating whether she could afford rent if she ate ramen for the entire month. The morning rush at Ramirez Corner Cafe had been brutal, a broken espresso machine, a Karen demanding a refund because her latte wasn't Instagram-worthy, and a spilled bag of coffee beans that sent her scrambling on her hands and knees while customers stepped around her like she was part of the decor. By noon, Ria's feet ached, her lower back screamed, and she'd seriously considered setting her barista apron on fire. "Mija, you look like death," Mrs. Josephine Ramirez said, her salt and pepper hair pulled back in a neat bun as she surveyed Ria with the critical eye of someone who'd been running this cafe for 30 years. "When's the last time you slept?" "Sleep is for people who don't have student loans," Ria muttered, wiping down the espresso machine with more force than necessary. Mrs. Ramirez clicked her tongue, a sound that held both sympathy and exasperation. "You're killing yourself for this place, and I can't even pay you what you're worth." Ria softened, guilt immediately replacing frustration. Mrs. Ramirez had given her this job when she desperately needed it, had let her pick up extra shifts, had never complained when Ria worked on her design projects during slow periods. The cafe was struggling. Everyone in the neighborhood knew it, but it was home. "I'm fine, Mrs. R," Ria lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." The older woman studied her for a long moment, then shook her head. "You're too talented to be stuck making lattes forever, Ria. Your papa, God rest his soul, had taught you skills most designers would kill for. Why aren't you using them?" Because design jobs required portfolios and connections and time, none of which Ria had when she was working 60-hour weeks just to keep her head above water. Because every rejection email felt like another nail in the coffin of the dreams her father had believed in. Because it was easier to make coffee than to risk failing at the thing she loved most. "I do design work on the side," Ria said instead, gesturing to the chalkboard menu behind the counter, hand-lettered in her careful, elegant script. "Remember, I did all your menus, your business cards, that promotional flyer, which I couldn't afford to pay you properly for," Mrs. Ramirez interrupted. "Ria, listen to me. A man came in yesterday asking if I knew any designers. High-end work, corporate client, generous budget. I gave him your card." Ria's heart stuttered. "You what?" "Don't give me that look. I showed him the menu, the signage you did for my daughter's quinceañera, even that mock-up you did for fun of the cafe redesign. He was impressed. Mrs. R, I don't even have a real portfolio website. I haven't—" Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. "Answer it," Mrs. Ramirez said, smirking like she knew exactly who was calling. Ria's hands were shaking as she slid to answer. "Hello? Ms. Anderson?" The voice was male, professional, with a faint accent she couldn't quite place. "This is Yoon Jae Boom, Executive Assistant to Mr. Byun Seok-woo, CEO of Hanseong International. Mrs. Ramirez recommended you for a design project. Are you available for a consultation tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Ria's mind went blank. Hanseong International. She'd seen their hotels, sleek glass towers that catered to business executives and wealthy tourists. This was leagues beyond menu boards and business cards. Yes, I'm available. Excellent. I'll send you the address. Please bring samples of your work. A pause. Mr. Byun looks forward to meeting you. The line went dead. Ria stared at her phone, then at Mrs. Ramirez, who was grinning like the cat that got the cream. What did I tell you, Mija? Opportunities don't knock. They call on private numbers and offer you a way out of this place. The next afternoon, Ria stood outside the Hanseong Tower in downtown Seattle, craning her neck to take in 47 stories of steel and glass that seemed to slice into the grey sky. Her portfolio bag, a battered leather satchel that had been her father's, felt suddenly inadequate, as did her carefully chosen outfit, a burgundy blazer over a black silk blouse, dark jeans, and the one pair of heels she owned that didn't have scuffed toes. The lobby was all marble and minimalist elegance. Ria gave her name to the receptionist, who directed her to a private elevator with a keycard. The ride to the top floor was smooth and silent, and Ria used the mirrored walls to check her reflection one last time. Her honey-brown skin looked good against the burgundy, and she'd tamed her 4A curls into a professional twist-out that framed her face. She looked competent, put together. She looked like she belonged here. The lie almost made her laugh. The elevator doors opened onto an executive floor that screamed money, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Modern art that probably cost more than Ria's annual salary. Furniture that looked uncomfortable but undoubtedly expensive. A man in his early 30s approached, his suit perfectly tailored, his expression politely neutral. Ms. Anderson, I'm Yoon Jae-bum. Thank you for coming on such short notice. His handshake was firm, professional. Ria tried to match his composure even as her stomach churned with nerves. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Yoon. Please, just Jae-bum. He gestured down the hallway. Mr. Byun is reviewing materials in his office if you'll follow me. They walked past conference rooms and private offices, everything pristine and coldly beautiful. Jae-bum stopped at a set of double doors at the end of the hall, knocked once and entered without waiting for a response. Mr. Byun, Ms. Anderson is here. Ria stepped into the office and forgot how to breathe. The space was massive, windows on two sides offering panoramic views of the city and the water beyond. But Ria barely noticed the view because all her attention had locked onto the man standing behind the sleek black desk. Byun Seok-woo was not what she'd expected. He was young, mid-30s, she guessed, with sharp, aristocratic features that belonged on magazine covers. His black hair was styled back from his face, emphasizing high cheekbones and a jawline that could cut glass. He wore a charcoal suit with the jacket discarded, his white dress shirt open at the collar, not casually but deliberately. The first 4 buttons undone to reveal a strong collarbone and the edge of a muscular chest. On the left side of his neck, just visible above the collar, was a small elegant tattoo, Korean script in vertical characters, delicate and precise. But it was his eyes that held her captive, dark, intense, and utterly unreadable, as they swept over her with an assessment that felt physical. Ms. Anderson. His voice was deep, controlled, with an accent that softened the English just slightly. Please sit. Ria forced her legs to move, settling into one of the chairs across from his desk. Seok-woo remained standing, and somehow that made him more imposing, all controlled power and coiled intensity. Jae-bum tells me you specialize in typography and print design, he said, moving to lean against the edge of his desk. The position brought him closer, and Ria caught the scent of his cologne, cedar and something darker, almost smoky. Yes, she managed, silently cursing the slight tremor in her voice. My father was a master printer. He taught me traditional techniques, letterpress, offset printing, paper composition, ink formulation. but I also have experience with modern digital design, branding, and show me." It wasn't a request. Ria opened her portfolio, spreading samples across his desk. Menu designs for Mrs. Ramirez's cafe, event invitations she'd created for a friend's wedding, a mock-up she'd done for a fictional bookstore, complete with logo, signage, and promotional materials. Seok-woo said nothing, but his eyes moved over each piece with an attention to detail that surprised her. He picked up the bookstore mock-up, studying the typography, the paper choice, the way she'd incorporated subtle texture into the design. "This paper," he said quietly, "Mohawk Superfine, eggshell finish, 130 lb cover weight." Ria blinked. "Yes. How did you—" "My father collected rare books. He taught me to appreciate quality in all things." Seok-woo set the sample down, his gaze returning to her face. "You have an exceptional eye, Ms. Anderson. Your work demonstrates both technical mastery and artistic sensitivity." Heat crept up Ria's neck. Compliments on her design work were rare, and coming from a man who clearly knew what he was talking about, the words hit differently. "Thank you, Mr. Byun." "Seok-woo," he corrected, and something in his tone made her pulse quicken. "I have a project that requires someone with your particular expertise. Hansong is rebranding our flagship hotel. New menus, signage, promotional materials, guest room collateral. Everything must be sophisticated, cohesive, and flawless." Ria's mind raced. A project of that scope, it could sustain her for months, maybe let her quit the cafe entirely, build a real portfolio. "I'd need to see the space, Man," she said, trying to sound professional despite her racing heart. "Understand the aesthetic, the target demographic, the existing brand guidelines. Of course, Jae-bum will arrange a tour." Seok-woo crossed his arms, the movement pulling his shirt taut across broad shoulders. "But first, I need to know, can you meet a deadline? This project must be completed in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. It was tight, almost impossible for one person, but Ria had worked under worse conditions. "Yes," she said with more confidence than she felt. "I can do it." Seok-woo studied her for a long moment, and Ria had the unsettling feeling he could see right through her bravado to the desperation underneath. But instead of calling her on it, he simply nodded. "Then welcome to the team, Ms. Anderson. Jae-bum will handle the contract details and your fee." He named a number that made Ria's vision blur at the edges. It was more than she made in 6 months at the cafe, more than she'd ever been paid for anything in her life. That's very generous," she stammered. "I pay for quality." Seok-woo's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe, or interest. "Besides, I have a feeling you'll be worth every penny." The way he said it sent a shiver down Ria's spine that had nothing to do with business, and everything to do with the intensity of his gaze. She left the building an hour later with a signed contract, a tour scheduled for the next morning, and the strangest sense that her life had just tilted onto a completely different axis. Layla Sanders met her for drinks that evening at their usual dive bar, her best friend's dark brown eyes widening as Ria recounted the meeting. "Girl, let me get this straight," Layla said, leaning forward across the sticky table. "This man, this insanely hot, rich, mysterious CEO, just handed you the job of your dreams, offered you more money than God, and did all of it while looking like a whole damn snack." "That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said." You spent 10 minutes describing his eyes. Layla took a long sip of her margarita, eyebrow raised. "So what's the catch?" "There's no catch. It's just a design job. Ria, honey, men who look like that don't exist without complications. Trust me, I've dated enough to know." Ria thought about the way Seok-woo had looked at her, the careful control in his movements, the almost predatory stillness he carried. There was something beneath the polished surface, something dark and tightly leashed. But she needed this job. She needed the money, the opportunity, the chance to finally use the skills her father had died, believing she'd make something of. "I can handle it," Ria said, more to convince herself than Layla. Her best friend's expression softened. I know you can, just be careful, okay? Something about this feels too good to be true. Ria wanted to argue, but deep down, a small voice whispered that Layla was right. She just didn't know how right until it was far too late to walk away. The Hansong Hotel was a masterpiece of modern luxury, all clean lines, natural materials, and understated elegance. Ria spent the first week immersed in research, photographing every corner of the restaurant and lounge, studying the existing materials, interviewing the head chef about menu changes, consulting with the hotel manager about brand vision. To her surprise, Seok-woo was involved in every step. He attended her presentations, reviewed her preliminary sketches, offered feedback that showed a genuine understanding of design principles. He was demanding but fair, pushing her to refine ideas but never dismissing her creative instincts. And he was always there. Ria would be photographing the restaurant's wine cellar and look up to find Seok-woo watching from the doorway. She'd be sketching logo variations in the hotel library and sense him approaching before she saw him. Some sixth sense attuned to his presence. He never touched her, maintained perfect professional distance, but the awareness between them was electric, a constant hum of tension that made her skin feel too tight. You're spending a lot of time here, Jae-boom commented one afternoon as Ria packed up her laptop in the hotel's business center. Seok-woo's right-hand man had been nothing but professional, but she caught the way he watched her sometimes, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. The project requires it, Ria said, careful to keep her tone neutral. Mr. Byun wants everything perfect. He does. Jae-boom's expression was unreadable. He's very particular about quality, about the people he allows close. There was a weight to those words that Ria didn't quite understand. I'm just the designer. Of course. But Jae-boom's slight smile suggested he didn't quite believe her. That evening, Ria was working late in the empty hotel restaurant, final proofing menu mock-ups on her laptop, when Seok-woo appeared. She hadn't heard him approach. The man moved with a predator's silence, and she jumped when his voice came from directly behind her. You should go home, Ms. Anderson. It's nearly midnight. Ria's hand flew to her chest, heart pounding. Jesus, you scared me. My apologies. He didn't sound particularly sorry. Seok-woo moved to her side, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, and leaned down to view her screen. These look exceptional. The typography on the dessert menu especially, the balance between modern and classic, is perfect. His proximity was doing dangerous things to her concentration. Ria could see the tattoo on his neck up close now, Korean characters in a delicate, flowing script, beautiful and somehow intimate. What does it mean? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Your tattoo. Seok-woo stilled. For a moment, Ria thought she'd overstepped, that he'd pull away or shut down, but instead, his hand came up to trace the characters, and his voice when he spoke was softer than she'd ever heard it. Yeary, weary. It means loyalty, righteousness, the bonds that cannot be broken. His eyes met hers, and the intensity there stole her breath. My father had me ink it the day I turned 18, a reminder of what matters most. Family, Ria whispered. Family, honor, keeping your word. Something flickered across his face, pain maybe, or regret. The debts we inherit, and the promises we are bound to keep. There was a story there, something deeper and darker than corporate business. But before Ria could ask, Seok-woo straightened, the shutters coming down over his expression. You work too hard, Miss Anderson, he said, his tone returning to that careful neutrality. Go home. Get some rest. I need you sharp tomorrow. It was a dismissal, clear and absolute. But as Ria packed her things and headed for the elevator, she felt his eyes on her the entire way. The breakthrough happened in week 3. Ria had been working in Seok-woo's office building. He'd given her a temporary workspace on the executive floor so she could consult with him easily, when Jae-bum brought in a stack of contracts for Seok-woo to review. "Import manifests for the new shipment," Jae-bum said, setting the papers on the desk. "Everything's been verified, but you wanted to personally review before signing." Seok-woo nodded, already pulling the documents closer. Rhea tried to focus on her own work, but her eyes kept drifting to him. The way he read with total concentration, the elegant movement of his fingers as he turned pages. The slight furrow between his brows when something didn't satisfy him. "Ms. Anderson, I need your opinion on something." Rhea looked up, surprised. Seok-woo was holding out a piece of hotel stationery, elegant letterhead at the top. "This is our current hotel stationery. I'm considering updating it as part of the rebrand. What do you think?" Rhea took the paper, her trained eye immediately cataloguing details. High-quality paper stock, subtle watermark, embossed logo. Classic and expensive. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "The paper choice is excellent, 100% cotton, probably cranes. The embossing gives it a luxury feel, but—" She paused, holding the sheet up to the light. "If you want to modernize without losing the prestige, I'd suggest a cleaner typeface for the logo. This one is a bit dated, and maybe—" She stopped mid-sentence, her attention snagging on something else. One of the contracts Jae-bum had brought in had slid partially off the desk, and the exposed corner caught the light at an angle that made Rhea's instincts fire. Without thinking, she reached for it. "May I?" she asked, fingers hovering over the shipping manifest. Seok-woo's expression shifted, something sharp and alert entering his eyes. "Why?" "The paper," Rhea murmured, already lifting the document to examine it more closely. "It's wrong." "Wrong how?" Rhea's father's voice filled her head, a phantom echo of countless lessons in their home print shop. "Paper tells a story, baby girl. Every fiber, every chemical, every manufacturing choice. It all leaves a signature." "This manifest is dated March 2019, she said slowly, turning the page to catch different angles of light. "But the paper has optical brightening agents. You can see the slight fluorescence under the overhead lights. OBAs at this concentration weren't standard in commercial paper stock until late 2020, early 2021. The room had gone very quiet. Rhea looked up to find both Seok-woo and Jae-bum staring at her with expressions she couldn't read. "Are you certain?" Seok-woo's voice was dangerously soft. Yes. My father taught me paper composition, authentication techniques. This is definitely modern stock, not from 2019. She pointed to the logo in the header. "And this, the company letterhead. The kerning is off." "Kerning?" "The spacing between letters. It's too tight, and the font weight is slightly heavier than it should be. Whoever recreated this logo didn't have access to the original font files, so they approximated. It's good work, but—" She met Seok-woo's eyes, suddenly uncertain. "It's not authentic. This document is a forgery. A very good one, but still a forgery." The silence that followed was suffocating. Seok-woo stood slowly, his movements controlled, but radiating a tension that made Rhea's instincts scream. He took the document from her hands, studied it himself, then looked at Jae-bum. "Get Elder Heo, now. And bring me every contract, every manifest, every piece of documentation we've received in the past 6 months." Jae-bum was already moving, pulling out his phone as he strode from the office. Seok-woo turned back to Rhea, and the intensity in his gaze should have frightened her. Instead, her heart raced for entirely different reasons. "Rhea," he said, her first name rolling off his tongue like a caress. "I need you to look at more documents. Can you identify other forgeries?" I think so. If they're using similar techniques, I should be able to spot the inconsistencies." "Good." He moved closer, and Rhea's breath caught as he reached out, his fingers gently tilting her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. "You may have just saved my empire. Do you understand that?" She didn't. Not really. But the way he was looking at her, like she was precious, dangerous, essential, made her pulse thunder in her ears. "I don't understand what's happening," she whispered. "I know." and that's probably for the best. His thumb brushed along her jawline, a touch so gentle it made her shiver. But I need your help, Rhea. I need that brilliant mind and those careful eyes. Will you help me? She should have said no, should have demanded explanations, walked away, protected herself from whatever darkness lurked behind those beautiful eyes. Instead, she heard herself say, "Yes." Seok-woo's expression shifted into something fierce and possessive. "Good girl." And Rhea realized with a jolt of fear and exhilaration that she was in far deeper than she'd ever imagined. Elder Heo Dong-sik arrived within the hour, a man in his late 60s with steel-grey hair and eyes that had seen too much. He greeted Seok-woo in Korean, the rapid exchange too fast for Rhea to follow. But she caught the tension in every word. By the time Jae-bum returned with boxes of documents, Seok-woo's office had transformed into a war room. Papers spread across every surface, and Rhea found herself at the center of it all, examining page after page under Seok-woo's intense scrutiny. She found 47 forgeries, shipping manifests, import contracts, financial agreements, bank transfers, all expertly crafted, all designed to paint Seok-woo's legitimate businesses as fronts for something far darker: human trafficking, drug smuggling, weapons deals. "Whoever did this is a professional," Rhea said, her voice hoarse from hours of explanation. It was nearly 3 in the morning, and exhaustion pulled at her, but adrenaline kept her sharp. "They have access to high-end printing equipment, knowledge of historical paper stock, expertise in typography and document design. This isn't amateur work." "Liu Feng." Elder Heo's voice was granite. He spoke in English now, for Rhea's benefit. "He's been planning this for years." "Who's Liu Feng?" Rhea asked. The 3 men exchanged glances. Finally, Seok-woo spoke, his voice carefully controlled. "A business rival. We've been competing for market share in the import-export industry. He wants to destroy my company's reputation, make it impossible for me to operate." It was the truth, Rhea sensed, but not the whole truth. There were layers beneath the words, secrets she wasn't being told. If these documents had been leaked to federal investigators, Jae-bum said quietly, the damage would have been catastrophic. Even proving they were forgeries would have taken months, and by then, everything would be destroyed, Seok-woo finished. His eyes found Rhea's across the desk. "But you caught them. Your father's training, your eye for detail, you saw what no one else would have noticed." Elder Heo was studying her with an expression that made Rhea uncomfortable. "She's a liability now," he said in Korean, apparently forgetting or not caring that she was in the room. "Liu Feng will find out she exposed his forgeries. She becomes a target." "Then we protect her," Seok-woo replied in English, his tone brooking no argument. "She stays close. I assign security." "Seok-woo, this isn't negotiable, Elder. She saved us, now we protect her." Rhea's stomach dropped. "Wait, protect me from what? You said this was corporate espionage, business competition." "It is," Seok-woo said, but his eyes told a different story. "But men like Liu Feng don't lose gracefully. Until we neutralize this threat, until we expose his scheme publicly, you could be in danger." "I didn't sign up for danger. I signed up to design menus." "I know." Seok-woo moved around the desk, and suddenly he was right in front of her, so close she could see the exhaustion shadowing his eyes, the tension in his jaw. "And I'm sorry for dragging you into this, but you're involved now, Rhea, and I will not let anyone harm you because of it." The intensity of his declaration stole her breath. "Why do you care so much?" His hand came up, fingers threading through her curls with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. "Because you're brilliant and brave, and you see details the rest of the world misses. Because you saved everything I've built without even knowing it, because—" He stopped, something vulnerable flickering across his face before he locked it down. "Because you matter." The air between them was electric. Rhea's hands came up to his chest, ostensibly to push him away, but her fingers curled into his shirt instead, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath the expensive fabric. "Seokwu," she whispered, and she didn't know if it was a protest or a plea. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "Tell me to stop." She should. God, she should. But instead, her eyes fluttered closed, her lips parting in invitation. "Sir," J-Bum's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Detective Wells is calling. He says it's urgent." Seokwu pulled back, his jaw tight with frustration, but he pressed a single, burning kiss to Ria's forehead before stepping away. "Stay here," he ordered softly. "We're not done talking." He left with J-Bum, and Ria was alone with Elder Hio, whose expression had shifted into something calculating. "You care for him," the older man said, not a question. "I barely know him. Yet you risked yourself to help him. You didn't have to examine those documents. Didn't have to use your expertise to expose a dangerous enemy's scheme." Elder Hio's eyes were sharp. "You could have walked away. He needed help. Many people need help. You chose to give it to him." The elder moved closer, his voice dropping. "Do you know what kind of man Byun-seok-woo is, Miss Anderson?" Ria met his gaze steadily. "I know he's more than he appears. I know there's darkness in his world, but I also know he's honorable in his own way." "Honorable." Elder Hio smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, Seok-woo values loyalty above all else. Yiri, the loyalty tattooed on his neck. It's his guiding principle. He will protect those he claims as his with everything he has." A pause. "But claiming you makes you a target. Are you prepared for that?" Sin out, she wasn't prepared for any of this. Not the danger, not the attraction, not the way Seok-woo looked at her like she was something precious he'd found in the wreckage of his world. "I don't have a choice anymore, do I?" Ria said quietly. "There's always a choice, child. The question is whether you're brave enough to make it." When Seok-woo returned an hour later, his expression was grim. "Detective Garrett Wells is on Liu Feng's payroll. He just confirmed that Liu Feng planned to leak the forged documents to the FBI next week, triggering a federal investigation." Ria's blood ran cold. "But now that we know they're forgeries, we can counter them. Expose Liu Feng's scheme before he executes it." Seok-woo's eyes burned with determination. "But it requires your continued help. I need you to create a forensic report. Detailed analysis of every forgery, proof that they're fabricated. Something we can present to authorities to discredit Liu Feng completely. That's going to take weeks of work. Technical analysis, documentation. I'll pay you triple your current contract, and I'll provide round-the-clock security." He took her hand, his grip warm and solid. "Please, Ria, I know I'm asking too much, but you're the only one who can do this." She looked down at their joined hands, at the way his thumb traced circles on her palm, unconscious, soothing, intimate. "If I do this," she said slowly, "I need honesty. No more half-truths, no more carefully worded evasions. What exactly is your business, Seok-woo?" The muscle in his jaw ticked. For a long moment she thought he'd refuse. Then he sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. "I run an import-export company, legitimate on the surface, but the world I operate in, the people I deal with, they don't all color inside legal lines. My father built this empire through connections to Korean organized crime families. When he was killed, I inherited not just the business, but the alliances. The enemies, the debts." Ria's heart pounded. "I'm trying to go legitimate," he interrupted. "For 2 years I've been reforming operations, cutting ties with criminal elements, building genuine legal businesses. But men like Liu Feng see it as weakness. They want to destroy me before I succeed in getting out." "So you don't—" She couldn't quite form the words. "I'm not innocent," Seok-woo said quietly. "I've done things I'm not proud of, made choices I can't take back. But I'm trying to be better, to honor my father's memory by building something real, something clean." His eyes searched hers desperately. "Does that change how you see me?" "It should. God, it absolutely should." But Ria thought of the way he looked at her designs like they were art. The gentleness in his touch despite the violence he'd clearly lived. The loyalty he inspired in men like J. Boom and Elder Hio. The honor beneath the darkness. "I see a man trying to change," she whispered. "That's more than most people can claim." The relief that washed over Seok-woo's face was devastating. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair. "You're too good for this world," he murmured against her curls. "Too good for me." Ria's arms came around him, holding him just as fiercely. "Then I guess we'll both have to try harder." When he pulled back, there were unshed tears in his eyes. "Ria Anderson," he said, voice rough with emotion. "What am I going to do with you?" "Keep me safe while I save your empire," Indy said, trying for levity even as her own heart cracked open. "That's the deal, right?" "Right." He kissed her forehead again, then her temple, then, with aching slowness, the corner of her mouth. "And after? When this is over?" "We'll figure it out." It was a promise neither of them was sure they could keep. But in that moment, wrapped in each other's arms with danger circling closer, it was enough. The next 2 weeks were a blur of work, danger, and stolen moments. Ria moved into a secure apartment, one of Seok-woo's properties, top floor, with J-Bum's hand-picked security team stationed 24/7. She told her mother she was on a special project requiring temporary relocation. Loretta Hudson had been suspicious but proud, and Ria hated lying to her. Layla was harder to fool. "You're telling me that some CEO has you locked in a penthouse with bodyguards because of corporate espionage?" Her best friend's voice crackled through the phone, disbelief evident. "Ria, that's not normal. I know it sounds crazy. It sounds dangerous. Girl, get out of there. Whatever he's paying you isn't worth your life." But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the way Seok-woo looked at her when she explained technical details of paper composition, like she was the smartest person he'd ever met. It was about the quiet dinners they shared in his office, eating takeout while reviewing documents. It was about the gentle way he'd tuck her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, the rare smiles that transformed his entire face, the vulnerability he showed only when they were alone. Liu Feng made his move on a Friday night. Ria was working late at Seok-woo's office building, finalizing the forensic report that would expose the forgery scheme. Seok-woo had left an hour earlier for a meeting with Elder Heo, Jae-boom standing guard outside the office door. She didn't hear them coming. One moment she was typing, the next the lights cut out. Jae-boom's shout was cut off mid-word, and Ria's survival instincts screamed. She dove under the desk, just as the office door crashed open. "Find the girl," a voice said in accented English. "Liu Feng wants her alive." Ria's hand closed around her phone, but rough hands yanked her out from under the desk before she could call for help. She fought, kicked, scratched, screamed, but there were 3 of them, and they were professionals. A cloth pressed over her mouth and nose, chemical smell, vision blurring. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Seok-woo's tattoo on a photograph taped to his desk. Yiri, loyalty. "I'm sorry," she thought. "I wasn't careful enough." She woke in a warehouse, hands zip-tied behind her back, head pounding. Across the space, she could see Jae-boom, unconscious, bleeding from a head wound. Alive, but hurt. "Ms. Anderson." The voice was smooth, cultured. "I apologize for the rough treatment. I'm Liu Feng. I believe you've been interfering in my business." The man who stepped into her line of sight was in his 50s, expensively dressed, with cold eyes that held no mercy. Behind him stood Detective Garrett Wells, looking uncomfortable but complicit. "I don't know what you're talking about," Ria said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Don't insult my intelligence. You exposed my documents as forgeries, ruined 2 years of careful planning." Liu Feng crouched in front of her, his smile razor-sharp. "But perhaps we can come to an arrangement. You have a gift, a very valuable gift. Work for me instead of Byun, and I'll let you live. I'll even pay you double whatever he's offering. Go to hell! The slap came fast, snapping her head to the side. Blood filled her mouth. Defiant. I can see why Seok Woo is so taken with you. He always did have a weakness for beautiful things he couldn't control. Liu Feng stood, brushing off his pants like he'd touched something dirty. But everyone has a breaking point, Miss Anderson. Let's find yours. The next hour was a nightmare. They didn't torture her, not physically, but the psychological warfare was brutal. Threats against her mother, against Layla, against everyone she loved. Promises of what Liu Feng would do to Seok Woo once he traded himself for her. Because that's what this was. Bait. They'd taken her to draw Seok Woo out, to force him into a position where Liu Feng could destroy him completely. He'll come for you, Liu Feng said conversationally. His loyalty won't allow anything else, and when he does, I'll kill him in front of you. Then I'll decide whether you're worth keeping. Ria's hands were numb from the zip ties, her face ached from the slap, but her mind was racing. The warehouse had loading docks, multiple exits. If she could get free, if she could find a way to warn Seok Woo... The warehouse door exploded inward. What happened next was chaos. Men in tactical gear poured through multiple entrances. Seok Woo's people, Ria realized dimly. Gunfire erupted, and she threw herself to the floor, rolling behind a crate. Through the confusion, she saw Seok Woo, no longer the controlled businessman, but something primal and terrifying, moving through Liu Feng's men like death incarnate. He reached her in seconds, dropping to his knees, his hands shaking as he cut through her zip ties with a knife. Are you hurt? His voice was rough, desperate. Did they... I'm okay. Ria's arms came around his neck and she felt him shudder. J-Bum needs help. They hit him. I've got him. Elder Heo appeared, moving quickly to the unconscious man. Get her out of here, Seok Woo, now. But before they could move, Liu Feng's voice rang out. Touching reunion. But you're not leaving, Baiyun. The Chinese crime lord stood on the upper catwalk, Detective Wells beside him, both armed. Liu Feng's gun was pointed directly at Ria. Let her go, Seok Woo said, his body positioned protectively in front of hers. This is between you and me. It was, until she destroyed my plan. Now it's personal. Liu Feng's finger tightened on the trigger. Say goodbye to your little artist. Time slowed. Seok Woo moved, pushing Ria down, covering her body with his own. The shot rang out and Ria screamed, certain she'd feel the impact, but it was Liu Feng who staggered, blood blooming on his shoulder. Detective Wells stood frozen, his own gun still raised, face pale with shock at what he'd done. I'm done, Wells said quietly. I'm done being your weapon. The warehouse erupted into motion again. Liu Feng's remaining men scattered, seeing their leader injured and their inside man turned. Elder Heo's people secured the perimeter, and Ria clung to Seok Woo, both of them shaking with adrenaline and relief. You saved my empire, Seok Woo whispered against her hair, his arms iron bands around her. But you're more important than any empire. I thought I'd lost you. I thought, I'm here, I'm safe. Ria pulled back just enough to cup his face to meet those intense dark eyes. Because of you. No, because of us. He kissed her then, desperate and claiming, pouring 2 years of loneliness and longing into the press of his lips. I love you, Ria Anderson. I don't deserve you, and I have no right to ask, but I love you too, she interrupted. Even though you're complicated and dangerous and your world scares me, I love you. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. Then stay with me. When this is over, when I've finished going legitimate, when I've made it safe, stay with me. Yes, it was a promise, a beginning, a choice to build something beautiful from the ashes of darkness. Liu Feng's empire collapsed within a week. With Detective Wells cooperating with authorities and Ria's forensic report exposing the forgery scheme, federal investigators turned their attention to Liu Feng instead of Seok Woo. The Chinese crime lord was arrested on multiple charges: fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. His organization fractured without his leadership, Absorbed or destroyed by rivals, Seok-woo's businesses survived the scrutiny, his legitimate operations standing up to investigation. The forged documents were exposed as fiction, his name cleared. But more importantly, the threat was gone. Rhea could finally breathe. The design project was completed. Menus, signage, promotional materials, all perfect, all ready for implementation. Mrs. Ramirez threw a small celebration at the cafe, proud of her former barista's success. Layla hugged Rhea so tight she couldn't breathe, whispering, "You scared the hell out of me, but I'm so glad you're okay." Loretta Hudson cried when Rhea finally told her the truth. Edited, sanitized, but honest about the danger she'd faced. "Your father would be so proud," her mother said, cupping Rhea's face. "You used what he taught you to save lives, to save the man you love." But the hardest conversation was the one Rhea had with herself. Seok-woo had kept his promise. He was transitioning completely to legitimate business, cutting the last ties to his criminal past, building something clean. But could she truly be part of that world? Could she trust that the danger was really over? She found her answer one quiet evening in Seok-woo's penthouse. He was cooking, an elaborate Korean meal he'd insisted on making himself, and Rhea watched him move around the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, that elegant tattoo visible on his neck. "What are you thinking?" he asked without looking up from the japchae he was stir-frying. "That I never imagined my life would look like this," Rhea said honestly. 6 weeks ago I was just a barista with design dreams. Now I'm in love with a former Mafia boss who cooks like a chef and quotes poetry. Seok-woo smiled. "Former. That's the important word. Is it really over? The danger? The violence? All of it?" He set down the spatula, turning to face her fully. "I can't promise there won't be complications. My past doesn't disappear just because I want it to. But I swear to you, Rhea, I will spend the rest of my life building something good. Something worthy of you." "You're already worthy," she said softly. "You were always worthy. You just needed to see it." He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "You saved my empire. But more than that, you saved me. Gave me a reason to want to be better." Rhea threaded her fingers through his hair, bringing his forehead down to rest against hers. "We saved each other." "Yes," he breathed. "We did." The kiss was soft, sweet, full of promise. And when they pulled apart, Seok-woo's eyes held a question, vulnerable, hopeful, terrified. "Move in with me, Tut," he said. "Not the secure apartment, not temporary. Here, with me. Build a life with me." Rhea's heart swelled until she thought it might burst. "Yes. I don't have a ring yet. I wanted to wait to do this properly. I don't need a ring." She cupped his face, smiling through happy tears. "I just need you. The real you. The man who values loyalty and honor and family. The man who looks at my designs like they're masterpieces. The man who risked everything to keep me safe." "He hired her to serve coffee," Seok-woo murmured, a smile playing at his lips. "She saved the Korean Mafia boss's empire, and he fell in love." Rhea laughed. "That's not how it happened." "Isn't it? You were hired to design menus. You saved my empire. And I—" His voice roughened. "I fell completely, irrevocably in love with the brilliant, brave, beautiful woman who saw the man I wanted to be, not the monster I'd been. You were never a monster. I was, but you made me want to be human again." They sealed the promise with a kiss, deeper this time, full of heat and need and the certainty that they'd found something worth fighting for. The japchae burned, forgotten on the stove. Neither of them cared. Rhea stood in the center of the newly opened Anderson and Björn design studio, surveying the space with satisfaction. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Elliott Bay, natural light flooding the open workspace where 3 designers she'd hired were already hard at work on client projects. Her name, her father's name, was on the door in elegant gold lettering she'd designed herself. "You're crying again," Seok-woo said, appearing at her side with 2 cups of coffee from the espresso machine he'd insisted on installing. "Happy tears, I hope?" The happiest. Ria accepted the cup, leaning into his warmth. I just wish my dad could see this. He always believed I'd make something of the printing knowledge he gave me. He'd be incredibly proud. Seok-woo wrapped an arm around her waist, his other hand resting on the small swell of her belly, barely visible yet, but there. Real. Of the studio, of you, of everything you've built. The pregnancy had been a surprise, a beautiful, terrifying surprise that had sent them both into joyful panic. But as Ria's hand covered Seok-woo's on her stomach, feeling the flutter of new life, she couldn't imagine anything more perfect. Mrs. Ramirez is catering the opening reception tonight, she said, smiling at the thought of her former boss fussing over appetizer arrangements. And Layla threatened to fight anyone who doesn't appreciate the significance of your typography choices on the invitation. She's fierce, that one. She approves of you now. Says any man who looks at my design work the way you do deserves a chance. Seok-woo laughed, the sound rich and warm. High praise from your terrifying best friend. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the city wake up below them. Seok-woo's legitimate business empire was thriving. Hotels, restaurants, import companies all operating cleanly, legally, successfully. He'd kept his promise, had spent 18 months proving that change was possible. Elder Hyo had retired to Busan, satisfied that Seok-woo had honored his father's memory while forging his own path. Jae-bum now managed the hotel operations, his loyalty rewarded with partnership in the business. Even Detective Wells, granted immunity for his cooperation, had left Seattle for a fresh start somewhere quieter. Do you ever regret it? Ria asked quietly. Leaving behind the power, the control, all of it? Seok-woo turned her in his arms, those dark eyes she'd fallen in love with holding nothing but certainty. Every morning I wake up next to you. I see your designs making businesses beautiful. I watch you build something genuine and good from the skills your father gave you. His hand came up to cup her face. The only thing I regret is the years I wasted before you walked into my life. I walked in to serve coffee, Ria reminded him, smiling. And you saved everything. He kissed her softly. My empire, my soul, my life. You gave me a future worth living. We gave each other a future. Yes. His hand returned to her belly, protective and reverent. And now we're giving our child one too. A life free from the darkness, full of design and beauty and love. Ria's eyes filled again. I love you, Byun Seok-woo. I love you, Ria Anderson. He paused, a teasing smile playing at his lips. Or should I say Ria Byun? She'd taken his name 3 months ago in a small ceremony, attended only by close friends and family. Loretta had cried through the entire wedding. Mrs. Ramirez had made a cake that collapsed halfway through the reception, and they'd all laughed and eaten it anyway. Layla had given a speech about how Ria had better be happy or she'd fight a crime boss. Jae-bum had quietly thanked Ria for giving his boss a reason to smile. It had been perfect. Ria Byun, she said, testing the weight of it. Designer, former barista, savior of empires. Mother of my child, Seok-woo added softly. Love of my life. The woman who saw me really saw me and chose to stay anyway. The studio door opened, and their first client of the day arrived, a small business owner looking for branding help. Ria straightened, slipping into professional mode, but Seok-woo's hand caught hers. Before you start changing the world, one design at a time, he murmured, I need you to know something. What? You didn't just save my empire that day you identified those forgeries. You saved me. The man I was, the man I thought I had to be, he was drowning. You pulled me to shore, gave me permission to be something better. Ria's throat tightened with emotion, and you gave me a reason to believe in my gifts, to use what my father taught me for something that mattered. We're quite the team, aren't we? The best. She kissed him once more, soft and sweet. Now go run your empire, Mr. Byun. I have designs to create. And you'll do it brilliantly, Mrs. Byun. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, then her belly. Both of you. As Seok-woo left and Rhea turned to greet her client, she caught her reflection in the studio window. Happy, fulfilled, loved, building a life she'd never imagined but couldn't imagine living without. Her father had been right. Paper didn't lie. Every fiber, every choice, every detail told a story. And Rhea's story, written in ink and love and second chances, was just beginning.